tau whihia. Piko ta ofi o e tau whihia. Kamo mea mai kia.
Floor is yours.
Malolele, and welcome to this special program, ladies and to this special program today. And this program is about the project was about the Stop the Hate, which in which we are working together with the Asta Radio Tonga, Radio Fiji, Ethnic Media Services, and the Auckland Asian Culture Center, and it was sponsored by California State Library Stop the Hate Initiative. I'm so excited that we're here with Professor Teresa Hattori and also Sipulu, Julian Doe, to discuss about this program. So first of all, I would like to introduce Professor Mary Teresa Hattori, which will do the first presentation. Professor Hattori is from the East-West Center. Also, she will talk about the overview of the Pacific Islanders community in America and their dynamism within the the AAPI umbrella. I will leave Professor Mary Hattori. Thank you, Professor.
Hapide and aloha from Oahu, Hawaii. I'm originally from Guam, and my father is a Japanese American from Kalihi, Oahu. He and his family moved to Guam when he was young, married my mother, who's a native Chamorro. And I have 4 brothers and 4 sisters, and moved to Hawaii to pursue my college education, and have lived here for since the early 80s. And growing up on Guam as a Chamorro, my dad was a Japanese American from Hawaii in that generation when it was more important to be American, actually safer to be American than Japanese. And so he grew up, he did not grow up with an Asian identity. He grew up with an American identity. And so I grew up as a Chamorro American, didn't realize I was Asian until I came to Hawaii, and people looked at me and saw my slanted eyes and immediately classified me as local and Asian. I did not know discrimination. I did not know racism or sexism until I came to Hawaii. And after college, decided to pursue a career in information technology. First Pacific Islander Director of Information Technology in the University of Hawaii system. I currently work for the East-West Center at the Pacific Islands Development Program, one of only 2 female Pacific Islanders in that position. And so not only are we dealing with racism and discrimination based on race, but also gender-based discrimination. As a Pacific Islander working in the Pacific Islands Development Program, I have come to realize that Pacific Islanders are very, very important to America for a number of reasons. First of all, the AAPI population is the fastest growing racial group in the United States. Pacific Islanders are across the country. In many of our states, we have significant populations. The Pacific Islands region is rather vast. Our cultures are extremely diverse. We are coming from different subregions known as Micronesia, Melanesia, and Polynesia. Many Americans lack basic understandings and literacy around the Pacific Islands. Many people I've run into assume that all Pacific Islanders are Polynesian because I live in Hawaii, which is part of Polynesia. And that just excludes millions of people and thousands of cultural groups. So Americans, I think, should better understand the diversity of the Pacific Islands. There are many centers in academia and the nonprofit world and the government sectors, many centers that focus on helping educate people about the Pacific Islands. So, we are your neighbors. We are your doctors, your teachers, your lawyers, your hotel workers, your essential employees. We're your next door neighbors, and yet you know very little about us. And there are so many life-affirming cultural values that Pacific Islanders bring that can actually mitigate the social problems, that can help solve some of the social woes we see in the United States and in other Western nations. So we are an important part of the population because we bring a cultural heritage with some values that could actually help save this planet and make our societies a better place to live. So, for example, in the Pacific, in many parts of Micronesia, and in the place where I grew up in Guam, we practice and value belonging. Right, you enter the world from the moment of conception. You enter the world in a state of belonging and recognition. Part of your mother, part of your. We come from a matrilineal society, so we are part of her clan. We are part of her people and her place. Nothing you do or don't do affects your belonging in society. You belong simply by virtue of being born. There's no need to prove yourself. We do have high aspirations and goals for ourselves and our children, high expectations as well, but things like material wealth and social rank they are not measures of worth. Think about all of the children in America, teenagers, adolescents who struggle with trying to prove themselves and earn the worth and the love of their families, who struggle with recognition. Think about all of our employees who are constantly looking for recognition in their workplaces, where they are struggling to belong. Think of all of the migrants. Think of all of the people who move in this country and in other places. We're highly mobile people. Much of the research around employee satisfaction among student success and emotional well-being is connected to belonging, a sense of belonging. This is something that comes naturally to Pacific Islanders. We can share this with other people, and we do share this in many ways, and thus make our societies a better place. We are the original stewards of the ocean and our islands. The very real, urgent threats of climate change can be managed and solved with the help of Pacific Islanders. There are many indigenous people who have scientific knowledge, environmental knowledge that can help. So we bring to our places, to this country, some very valuable knowledge, but often that knowledge is not acknowledged, it's not recognized, it's not welcomed. And so you're losing out on an entire pool of talented people with skills, knowledge, and abilities that can actually make this place better. And the last thing I'll say is we are important to America because right now, global political events are occurring that impact the United States and her people. For example, the government of Japan plans to disseminate wastewater from the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant into the Pacific Ocean. Many Americans eat fish from that ocean. It is the largest body of water. It impacts many Americans. Some of you swim in that ocean, right? And yet many Americans know nothing about this plan, which is moving forward despite the objections and the concerns of scientists and many Pacific Islanders. So our ignorance can actually have negative impacts on our health. Americans don't know about this. They're not aware of what will happen. We don't know how this will impact our health, but it will. There are other geopolitical events, such as the U.S. competition with China, alliances within our region, across different countries and nations. The less we know, the more negative the impacts can be on us. And so I think that, for those reasons, Pacific Islanders are very important to this country. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Emily, but are you on mute?
I'm sorry. Thank you so much, Professor Hattori, for those very strong presentation. And I believe this because there are so many things that I can see from a radio perspective that the Pacific Islanders need to be empowered with all the information that they need, but we still can't do that. For that, I think I'm going to I'll see if there's any questions from Julianne and Sandy and Michelle before we go on to Spulu.
I don't have any questions. I just thought that Professor Hattori's presentation was so powerful. It's historical and also philosophical at the same time. It highlights the urgency for understanding a community that has long been ignored and invisible, especially in a setting in America. And this is definitely the kind of information that we really need to disseminate and also share in many important forums like this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julianne. Okay, with that, Mary, thank you very much again, Professor Hattori. I think we're gonna continue on with Spulu now. Spulu is a Tongan artist, a dance performer, social commentator based in San Francisco area. And Spulu, can you talk about the identity issues, the stereotypes, misinformation aimed at the Pacific Islander community within the current social and political atmosphere, and your vision for ethnic community? Spulu, thank you.
Emily, for that introduction, and again, malo to Dr. Hattori. I think we crossed paths. I think in so many ways. So it's good to be in the same space to talk about the important work we both are doing in our community. And a quick introduction. Ko hingoa Spencer Simotepulu, haume Okalani, California. Oku fae me neopu vava'u. And ko tamai me falelo hapai. So I think in many Pacific Islander culture, our introduction to our name is important to our family lineage in any work in any space. I try to say in much Tongan that I know and have inspiration and aspiration to learn more. And I think with the barriers that I have with Tongan language, just sheds light to the disadvantage that I have as a Tongan American here in the U.S., being part of a migration story where my family has migrated here in the U.S. in the 80s for financial goods, for religious purpose, for education. And I stand here representing my family and my country in ways that I had to navigate both from a Tongan household and also in an American culture. So my work really tries to dissect the different entities of what the expectation of being a Tongan person, a Tongan son, a Tongan member of the society in Tonga, and then also an American, and being someone who is part of what my family has come here for, this American dream. And I think the work that I do in terms of utilizing performing arts as a storyteller, as a creator, it's nothing new to Pacific culture. We utilize art in ways to share our stories and our struggles, and the things that Dr. Hattori has shared in terms of climate change, whether it's climate change within the world, but also within our environment in our homes. And I think what we're touching on, the common theme, is home and api, which is something that we often, as humans, try to find community and a sense of belonging. And I think my overall goal in the work that I do is really try to find those struggles and stories within, excuse me for that, trying to find ways to unpack and resolve some of the things that
ethnic community. Folau. Thank you.
Emily, for that introduction. And again, malo to Dr. Hattori. I think we crossed paths. I think so many, like in so many ways. So it's good to be in the same space to talk about the important work we both are doing in our community. And a quick introduction. Ko hingoas Spencer Simotepulu, haume Okalani, California. Oku fae me neopu vava'u. And ko tamai me falelo hapai. So I think in many Pacific Islander culture, our introduction to our name is important, to our family lineage, in any work, in any space. I try to say in much Tongan that I know and have inspiration and aspiration to learn more. And I think with the barriers that I have with Tongan language, just sheds light to the disadvantage that I have as a Tongan American here in the US, being part of a migration story where my family has migrated here in the US in the 80s for financial goods, for religious purpose, for education. And I stand here representing my family and my country in ways that I had to navigate both from a Tongan household and also in an American culture. So my work really tries to dissect the different entities of what the expectation of being a Tongan person, a Tongan son, a Tongan member of the society in Tonga, and then also an American, and being someone who is part of what my family has come here for, this American dream. And I think the work that I do in terms of utilizing performing arts as a storyteller, as a creator, it's nothing new to Pacific culture. We utilize art in ways to share our stories and our struggles, and the things that Dr. Hattori has shared in terms of climate change, whether it's climate change within the world, but also within our environment in our homes. And I think what we're touching on, the common theme, is home and api, which is something that we often, as humans, try to find community and a sense of belonging. And I think my overall goal in the work that I do is really try to find those struggles and stories within, excuse me for that, trying to find ways to unpack and resolve some of the things that have come up for a lot of Pacific Islander who are born here in America that are still trying to navigate through what it's like to be Pacific Islander and Tongan and what it's also like to be American, and having to navigate through those. Identity causes issues of mental health. There's a lot of conversation with mental health that's never ever addressed in our community. And I think we can't move forward and address other issues of climate change and global issues unless we address the things that are happening in our home first, and why the work that I do as an artist is important to address those issues first before we reach out to our brothers and sisters, our siblings and family across board. And I think when I do the work that I do, the common theme again is what is it like to create home in a community. As a person that is Pakalaiti, Laithi, artist, a man, presenting masculine, it's important to see how the treatment of all the things that are happening here in this country, specifically in the US, the United States, play a role in how we treat others and in other communities. Why Stop the Hate campaign and the conversation we're having is important, is that the issues within our home are not even addressed. And I think by addressing them, the conversation can be very tabu or taboo in ways that can't. We're still in the early stage of having a dialogue and conversation that is healthy and productive. And I don't think we're at that stage here specifically in the United States with Pacific Islanders to address those things, to even move forward, to talk about resources and access. I think once we have those conversations about identity, about truth, about our trauma, I think we then can create a sense of understanding where we are at as a culture. I think a lot of the resources are allocated to specific communities and not many Pacific Islanders, and why the conversation is not often talked about in our schools, our workspaces, and why as an artist, it's important for me to find creative ways, innovative ways to talk about what is going on in our community. And I think the things that Dr. have shared is all great points and all woven and intersected in ways that as an artist, it's important for me to talk with the creative conversation and then find ways to talk about it. And for me, it's dance. For me, it's fashion, music. And again, these are tools that our communities are not utilizing. We're utilizing it in different ways. We're utilizing it at church. We're utilizing it in our own specific community, but there's still some kind of barrier where our communities are not ready to step out of our own communities to understand what our siblings in Guam are going through, in Hawaii, in the other Micronesian islands, Melanesian islands that are often getting left out in the equation when we talk about Native Pacific Islander narratives. And I think what we need to really address is like what conversations are already happening, what things are in alignment to the arts in ways that could help move our community forward. It's interesting to see a lot of kalapu start, a lot of dance programs in the Bay Area start to emerge, specifically for me, Tongan community in the peninsula, in the Bay Area, in the South Bay, also along the East Bay, where there's conversations happening. But I think what we're asking of our community is, what more can we do to move out of the conversation stage, the processing stage, to solidify an action, a plan in ways that really could unify a lot of our other siblings in the diaspora. So My work again is using art, but I think the art is already something woven into our communities already. There's a lot of weavers, a lot of cooks, a lot of folks that create the canoes. Those are different ways of expressing creativities and talking about climate change that we need to bring back into our community. And I think when we talk about resources and accessibility to support, we need the money. We need the funding, the proper funding to go to specifically communities that are doing the work, whether it's on a nonprofit level, creative level. The conversation still needs to be consistent. And I'm in a space in my career as an artist to have those conversations and willing to find ways to include everyone who's struggling to find voice and truth in ways that I found it for myself as an artist. Malo.
Hello, Alpito. Spulu, thank you so much, Spulu, for that great presentation. And that's very true. There's a saying that was done by a previous king of Tonga that says, "We are the most wonderful community." And I can refer that to what's going on with Pacific Islanders in America. We are the most wonderful community in every aspects of life, even though we are very small. Because we are very small, not only that, but we have our own unique culture that is not recognized by policymakers. And he also adds on and says, our vulnerability will get worse due to lack of knowledge. And we can engage to each other and empower each other in our own community little group, church group, women's group, this nonprofit for the Pacific Islands. But we're not engaging to policymakers. We don't even have that connection. And with that, we are still vulnerable and we are still invisible. We need to step up like these two strong presentation, so we can engage to the policy level of this United States of America. And I think Ethnic Media Group have made a good effort, like what we're doing today, because Julian, the co-director of at EMS, Ethnic Media Service, will discuss the critical role of ethnic media and the available communication technology in terms of this communication structure can help the Pacific Island community leadership promote culture, not only that, engage and know more about what's going up there. So that will make us a little bit more powerful. Okay, I'll pass on to Julian. Thank you, Julian.
Thank you so much, Emily. Again, my name is Julian Doe. I'm a co-director at Ethnic Media Services. I'm really honored to be on this panel with Professors Mary Hattori and artists and social commentators, Spulu. While I'm not an expert on the Pacific Islander history and the Pacific Islanders American communities, but I do have some familiarity with the regions. At the end of the Vietnam War, when there was an evacuations of Vietnamese refugees out of the country, my family was actually got transported to Guam, and we stayed there for I believe almost a week. So that was my first exposures to the Pacifics, and then some years later, I had a chance to visit the French Polynesia. But since then, I have some fascinations with the island cultures and community development, and so I joined the Peace Corps, and I was assigned to Jamaica in the Caribbean, and I spent over 2 years there working in the economic and community development I get a sense of the challenges that many islands have had over the years. And then when I visit Polynesia some years later, I found that there's quite a few similarities, not everything, but some similarity in terms of challenges. And especially if you're been occupied by some bigger European powers in the past. So my speaking role here today is really more as a media expert looking into the questions of how to use communication as a tool for promoting Pacific Islanders community identity and presence within the AA and HPI, Asian American Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander umbrella, and society at large. In my experience, that it is so unfortunate that at many AA and HPI culture events, there's a usual absence of Pacific Islander representations, and I meant on the mainland, that is. And it's also not unusual for many Pacific Islanders to get mistaken as Black Americans. And in this context, this is how many Pacific Islanders got discriminated and even exposed to many hate attacks and verbal abuse. So this lack of visibility and understanding about Pacific Islanders is one of the reasons that makes this community so vulnerable. At workplaces, consumer markets, and even public spaces. So while the work of scholars like Professor Hattori and artists like Spulu have provided Pacific Islander with a clear identity and a clear sense of belonging, and the tradition and the spirits of what being Pacific Islanders, there exists a challenge to disseminate these informations to the target audience, so people and also could learn, and also the society at large. Today, with accessible and cheap technology, video and audio reporting and text story messages can be delivered to anyone, anywhere in the world through a phone number or an email address. But that's also a problem. Around the clock, 24/7, everyone on this planet has been inundated with ads, news, and social media messages. It means that you really would have to compete with other information providers, and not counting even the misinformation groups to get people attentions. So from the practicality standpoint, for a communication strategies, I like to suggest a three-pronged approach. One is to maintain and expand the network with thought leaders like Professor Hattori and artists Spulu. Two, organize community forums through radio shows and in persons at media events, featuring thought leaders and social activists to educate and inform the community about the latest issues, as well as to join in the national conversations on topics like elections, climate change, which has impacted not just the mainland, but also Pacific Islands. And lastly is to develop a social media strategy, because as I mentioned earlier, it's so difficult to compete for attentions from anyone these days. And so you have to do it well to disseminate informations, and especially to connect with the youth. They are the newer generations. So they all know how to use social media very well. They can also help and create a multiplier effect to amplify the informations and messages. So just one last word about what's going on in the Pacifics. It's been forecasted that World War III will happen in the Indo-Pacific theater. So in this context of global conflicts, the Pacific area has been converted to a narrative of war, of conflicts. And yet there's so much out there that can be learned and can be take advantage of the talents of the people from this area that Professor Hattori mentioned about. So I think from Professor Hattori's presentations, I think there is an added challenge to this is how to really wrestle away the narrative that is so violent, that is so contentious, and talk about the peace and the resources and the talents of the area in the Pacific. So I am there.
Thank you so much, Julian. You done? No?
Yes, I'm done.
Okay. Thank you so much for that information. And I believe Dr. Hattori and Spulu, we all realize the need to empower our Pacific Islander community. And I just came like 10 years ago. I was not here that long. But what I realized when we do with the radio, we do all these programs like the awareness on census, the awareness on COVID-19, the awareness on climate change. I can see the lack of knowledge of our community here in America. And not only that, but like I mentioned before, there is no engagement between us in the national, in the policymakers. Simple as the Pacific Islanders don't care to go to do census because they don't know, and they don't know what is the census to do with their right to vote and what the benefit they get out of that census. Those are the awareness, and those are the things that we need to engage the government to please educate our people to know, so they know the importance of those things. COVID-19, we were the highest rate of death from COVID-19 due to our own lack of knowledge and our own lifestyle. And it comes time now to stop the hate, like you from your presentation. It's the same thing. We have victims of hate left and right, but our community don't know where we're gonna go, to the cop, to the police, to here. After all, there is a strategy here. There's a process in place for our community to come in, but we don't know. So with that, I think Julian and also Professor and Spulu, like all this recommendation that Julian have given us, we can take that for consideration. And I'll leave the floor to you guys to say what you want to say. I think we will continue on from here after. This is not the end of the program. This is the start. Right, Julian?
Yes.
Yeah. But I'll open up the floor for everybody. Whoever want to speak first.
Professor Hattori?
Yes.
Mahalo, Sidus Masi. Really moved by your words, Spulu and Julian. I think, we need a call to action. And as Julian noted, and what we've seen working well within our Pacific Islander communities here, is that we can encourage civic engagement. We can activate our communities, and in particular our youth, through the arts. We've had poetry workshops with Micronesian youth following a officer-involved shooting of a Micronesian youth, right? Poetry in response to that event was really a powerful way for young people to process the event, as well as engage civically, let their feelings be known, go to their elders in the community, and then activate everyone around this issue so that we could then go to the police force, the police commission, and lawmakers. So we've been able to actually get an audience with police commissioners, with the leadership around that kind of issue. But we had to reach out to youth, and we had to use the arts to do it. The arts are so powerful, and it really reflects who we are as a people. I'm an academic, but I'm also a poet. I weave, I teach weaving, and we are holistic. We're not siloed into just one area. Our way of being and understanding is holistic, and the arts and movement and different languages that we use can be so empowering, and not just the language of our bodies, but the language of our peoples. And as a person who, I often tell people that my bilingualism was bullied out of me when I moved to Hawaii. I was bullied because I had an accent. I didn't know that some of my words were not English, they were Chamorro, because back home we speak both in the same sentence. And so I was told I'm in America, speak English only. But poetry and song allow me to use my language and to tap into that and to relearn my language. And for people like Spulu, right, learning your language and embracing that right and your heritage, which you have every right to own and embrace through the arts, is one way that we can really activate our youth, help them feel safe. We can share our, you talked about mental well-being here in Hawaii. The highest, the suicide rate among youth in our public schools is greatest among Micronesians. I think that because back home we don't have words in our own language for things like anxiety or stress or schizophrenia. We deal with those things differently back home, and mental health professionals here are not culturally competent. Often they don't know, and our parents don't understand the Western words for those sorts of things. But the arts can help us talk about mental illness. The arts can help us talk about the threat of losing our islands. The arts provide a way for us to share our very sophisticated ancestral Pacific Islander wisdom with the rest of the world. And so I hope that one of the outcomes of this show might be that we actually create more programming for all sectors of our Pacific Islander groups and others, the general public, because the arts are also a way to unite us all. Thank you.
Yes, yes. If I can respond, I hear you 1,000%. And I think, as I mentioned, just as you were sharing, I think about like Queen Salate, who's a poet. And I think about from her poetry, the punakes, the choreographers, the creators, that again, if we are reminded of what is already has been created within our culture, I think the programs, yes, we do need to create more programs, but also strengthen the programs that exist. I think we need to find out how we can improve leadership. We can find ways to not reach our youth, but also our babies, the elders specifically. Our elders are also not aware of, a lot of my mother's stories is that coming to the United States was her salvation, was the ultimate prize. So for me, knowing that also brings comfort that whatever happened to her in Tonga or whatever her upbringing was, that this country was that for them. But for me, as an artist who understands American culture on the level that, yes, Pacific Islanders also have disproportionately disadvantages in so many areas, whether it's education, the workforce, that we're also need to take into consideration the other narratives and struggles of our Black African-American siblings who are constantly dealing with violence at way higher status as what we are facing in our Pacific Island culture. Once we understand that, we can also understand and move on to where I'm at, Uchin Ohlone territory, the indigenous folks of this country, that there are so many ways we can solidify our stories if we find ways to strengthen our community. Yes, through the arts, but also going to spaces where we're not welcome. As someone that comes from a religious family, I'm always finding ways to still be free and still practice my femininity and creativity in a household that's religious, that I can still be myself and hold my own. But again, until we find those stakeholders, those leaders that can provide these tools for youth, elders, our babies also, that we can definitely see some shifts and changes so that we don't to go into World War III too. But Julian said that that's the direction we're heading, but to start that conversation in all spaces we're in really can get folks thinking. I think once we start to get folks thinking, people will start to question. And I think we need folks to start questioning the normacy of what they're at, what's normalized in their spaces, that some of our conversations in our own culture and some of our practices do perpetuate white supremacy in ways that we need to dismantle and check. So once we again gain all the knowledge that Emily has shared, whether it's social media, movies, I think what brings me joy is that the youth, they're speaking more. They're on social media a lot. Everyone's having a conversation, but I think it's there could be some ways to redirect information in ways that we can speak our truth and take action from there.
Thank you so much.
I'm thinking that the U.S. is the most diverse country on earth. Everybody's here. And we started with the wave, of course, the Native American or the original people of this land, and then the European came, and then other groups. Over the years, there's been a lot of frictions and tensions between groups, and that's how we are here to talk about a lot of the Stop the Hate campaigns, trying to alleviate these social crisis. But overall, as a nation, U.S. has been able to hold everybody together. I would say pretty solid to become a very strong country. So I'm just thinking in that context, and when we can drill down a little bit more. Whenever we're talking about Asian communities, people always say that, but then we have Chinese, Korean, Vietnamese, Japanese, Filipinos, and so on. Although there is that umbrella, but there's also a distinctive group, and it's kind of ironic that this is the first time ever that I see there is a movement of mobilizing the Asian community together against this crisis of this Stop the Hate. So for the Pacific Islanders communities, we are talking about so many groups under this umbrella as well. So Professor Hattori, does it really take a crisis like this that could bring people together to a common goal to be mobilized, or can it be something more peaceful, more prosperous, more philosophical, as you mentioned, and also through arts, like Spulu talked about?
Our people are just so diverse, and our concerns at the family level and community level, and even at the state level are very, very different. For example, the migrants from the compact states, the Republic of Palau, the Federated States of Micronesia, and the Republic of the Marshall Islands. Even within those three nations, their challenges are different. So, for example, Marshallese is still struggling with the legacy of nuclear testing by the United States. Very, very different concerns than those that their cousins from the other COFA nations, and then very different from concerns of people from the Polynesian Islands and then Melanesian Islands. So unity is a challenge. It will always be a challenge, but I like to think that there is unity in that diversity, and that there's some overarching, almost universal Pacific Islander principles around which we can gather. And the arts are one of those. The Festival of Pacific Arts and Culture will occur in Hawaii in early June of 2024. You will see tens of thousands of people come together, united in their diversity. So we can come together around these positive events. We saw many communities come together to combat COVID in Hawaii. All of the, Pacific Islander, Native Hawaiian groups really mobilized to unify, to help each other through that crisis. We, in our islands, are probably the best at living in harmony with each other and with nature. Harmony in some of the islands is one of the most valued parts of our cultures. And so it's easier for us to unite around positive things and harmonious events in our lives, like celebrations. We don't learn how to deal with conflict very well. It's not part of our nature. And so coming together to combat the negative things that are happening is not as easy for us.
Emily, I think you have to have Professor Hattori more on your talk shows. She has so many great insights that it's so true that we can be so cynical at times, and yet there are so many beautiful things out there that have been uniting so many people, and yet maybe the faults of the medias hasn't really been talked about. We censor so much on the negative things, and I think this is where that we really need to wrestle this narrative away from all of these polarizations talk around the world, and particularly in this country. Of course, the reality is there, but it doesn't have to be always be there.
And I will say that, parts of our cultures in some islands of the Pacific, humility is very important. Pride is almost a sin. And so it's hard for us to share our positive stories, to talk about our achievements or our accomplishments. I really appreciate opportunities like this because I'd never put myself forward if I wasn't invited. Spulu's, you're nodding your head. I think you understand. So media can be very helpful in shining a light on our successes, things that we don't know how to promote ourselves. We don't know how to talk about the achievements and successes of everyone in our community because we need to be humble. And so media can serve that purpose to give us that platform. Performing arts, you give us that platform to share those elements of our culture. And I think that's one way we can do this. Bring our stories out through invitation and creating these spaces and platforms.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hattori. Spulu, any final word from you?
I'm just thankful for being on this platform to share just the work that I do and being a part of a conversation that's larger than myself, that's beyond the work that I do, that's important for me to just reflect and think about how to continue to build and create more with the larger community. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I believe that this program I realize that we are complete. Since I'm from the Pacific Media Network, and like the professor have said, that the media should play a role, especially with our culture. We need a media there. If not, then we're just talking to ourselves and empower ourselves. And so we'll you said, it's a call to action. And I think we're ready to action. We just we will continue on with this. And thank you so much for your time, for your wonderful and powerful presentation today, Spulu and Professor Hattori. And I hope that this is the beginning of our journey with Julian and the United and the Ethnic Media Services for their assistance. Anything from there? I think that's it for today. Thank you so much. We'll see you again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Emily. And once again, such a great honor to be on a discussion with Professor Hattori and also with Spulu. And like Spulu said, I echo him that this topic is really greater than any one of us, and it's just a privilege to be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Spulu, I hope I see you during FestPac.
Yes, I hope to see you soon. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Thank you. You guys have a nice weekend.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you. Thank you, Julian.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Bye.
Lakai matangi peangi lima O patu a I heto o nesiva He pua soisi o taulua pahina O malaha he seino hala tuituia Lakai matangi peangi lima O patu
Radio Vake Tali Folau ke tau tai mi to e tau mini te ua ki he ua ho e kume kai nga te ki tamate ia e tau live ka tau toi ho kwat ka na mo tok mea mai fokia ke por kalama koia o e ta ofi o e tau fehi a pe mo Ethnic Media Services se fo panga fokia e library California State Library Public Library. Koia te tau ki malolo he ki break tau to koko atu o tui o se miniti e pani ma pe mi heni.